All right, I think we are good. Hello, everybody. It's good to see you. It is Thursday. We got so much to cover. We have Den back here who is helping with moderation. He's going to make sure all is well in the comment threads. As always, you could support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. And also, if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, you know the drill, friendlyatheist.com. So many stories to get to today. And I'm going to go ahead and get started as soon as I could pull this first one up. Okay, this is a wild story involving the Jehovah's Witnesses, which I don't talk about that often, but in this case, it's very relevant. Turns out they are going after one of their longtime critics for a wild reason. And I'm not going to give that away just yet, but I'll explain it in just a bit. Here's what you need to know about the Jehovah's Witnesses as it pertains to this story. Do you all remember a few years ago when the Pennsylvania Attorney General, at the time it was Josh Shapiro, he's currently the governor, but he was the Attorney General, and he did this grand jury investigation into the Catholic archdiocese across the state of Pennsylvania. And that grand jury report, when it came out a few years ago, it was a bombshell. It had so many details about how the Catholic Church had committed, all these allegations against children, what priests did to children. It had all these details. It had so many stories about how the church covered it up. It was such a damning report that so many other states decided to do the same thing. They had their own grand jury investigations into the Catholic Church. And it was like Spotlight, but 20 years later and even bigger than the first time. So that's what Josh Shapiro did with the Catholic Church. But what you may not have seen in the news is that in 2020, Shapiro also opened a grand jury investigation into the Jehovah's Witnesses. Look at the timestamp on this. It's February of 2020. Pennsylvania opens grand jury investigation into Jehovah's Witnesses cover-up of that abuse. And so they were investigating what the Jehovah's Witnesses were doing, just like they did with the Catholic Church. So this was looking into congregations across the state. Were people accused of doing bad things within those congregations? Were the congregations and the denomination covering them up in any way? And one of the reasons Shapiro was even doing this is because The Atlantic had published a story just a year prior. Look at the dateline on this. This is March of 2019. And look at the headline: a secret database of child abuse of former Jehovah's Witnesses using stolen documents to expose allegations that the religion has kept hidden for decades. It turns out, according to this whistleblower, the Jehovah's Witness had kept basically a spreadsheet of people in their congregations who had been accused of these heinous crimes, but they didn't tell anybody about it, and they sure as hell did not go public with that information. Someone must have leaked it to this whistleblower, and now he was blowing the whistle. So this is why, one of the reasons Shapiro decided to investigate the Jehovah's Witnesses, right? So the name of that whistleblower in that story was a guy named Mark O'Donnell. He's one of many former Jehovah's Witnesses who now spends his time trying to sound the alarm, not just about why the religion is wrong, because like all religions, it is wrong, but why that denomination tries to keep this sort of thing hidden, why they cover it up, why people who support those congregations are helping the denomination cover this stuff up. He actually told journalists he was interviewed by Josh Shapiro's investigators for that the grand jury thing, largely because he's the go-to guy. If you're a leader in the Jehovah's Witnesses, but you got some secrets, everyone kind of knows Mark is the guy you talk to if you want to make sure this stuff gets out without implicating yourself, right? So that's what Mark O'Donnell was doing. And the amazing thing is that in 2022, like 2 years after this investigation began, Josh Shapiro announced, look at this, Attorney General Shapiro announces charges against 4 for sexual abuse across Pennsylvania. Like, that grand jury investigation and the work Mark had done had actually led to 4 people getting charged with these crimes. And according to Shapiro at the time, that was 4 men charged with abusing 19 people, including their own children. And in the years to come, more charges would follow. Right now, I believe 16 people associated with the Jehovah's Witnesses in Pennsylvania have been charged in these investigations. So just a damning story, a horrible cover-up. And as you can imagine, if, let's say you're a normal, good Jehovah's Witness who's like watching this all unfold, you're thinking, oh no, this looks very bad. What if you're the leader of one of these congregations and you're thinking, they're going to investigate my people too, aren't they? Well, what am I supposed to do if federal or state investigators come to my door and they want information? Like, what am I supposed to hand over? Am I supposed to cooperate? How am I supposed to cooperate? All of that stuff. So in February of 2023, representatives from 11 Jehovah's Witnesses congregations, specifically in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, they decided to get on a conference call together. And they had 2 lawyers who were going to join them on this call. And there's nothing weird about this, because on the surface, it looks like, okay, these Jehovah's Witnesses leaders want to chat with lawyers about, hey, what do we do in this situation? What are we supposed to do when investigators talk to us? It would be nice to have a lawyer say, here's what you got to do. Here's what they're not allowed to ask you about. I mean, there's nothing weird about that. So I guess the lawyers sent out the investigation for what I'm going to call like a Zoom call. The lawyers send out that information to the leaders of these congregations. And then someone who had received that email said, you know what would be good right now? If Mark O'Donnell was also in on this call. Because at least I know nothing's going to get covered up if Mark is on this call. So somebody, and I have no idea who it is, decided to send that Zoom call information over to Mark. So what does Mark do with that information? He knows he's not supposed to be on this call. However, he just got invited to join the call. So he called in. And if you've ever been on like a Zoom call, you know, especially if you're running it, you know you have access to who are the participants on this call. And if their names are not available to you, you know what number they are calling in from, right? But I guess there's enough people on this call that no one took attendance. No one decided to look through that list. So basically, O'Donnell is in on this call. He's using his own phone number. He calls in, whoever's running the meeting just sees the list. I guess everyone's here, and they start the call. And so I forgot if this was like literally after that call ended or maybe a day or two later, but Mark decides to go on YouTube where he chats with people just like I'm doing with you right now. And he decides to tell people what he heard on that phone call. And here's the thing, that video has since, the video of Mark talking to his followers, that has been taken down. However, my understanding, based on what I have seen from online comments and whatnot, it's nothing scandalous. It involves lawyers saying things like, hey, congregation leaders, let's discuss what's called a litigation hold, which is to say, do not destroy any documents. You're not going to come out of that one looking good. Like, make sure you preserve everything. Here's the stuff you need to have at your disposal. They also discussed how if the witnesses want to settle these cases, instead of taking them to court, if they want to just settle it and be done, here's what the process would be. Maybe here's how much it would cost the congregation, things like that. So here's the question I ask all of you. Mark joined that call. They did not know he joined that call. Is that illegal? Because that is what the witnesses are now saying. They filed a lawsuit against Mark O'Donnell saying, and I'm going to show you this here, he invaded their privacy. Here's just a glimpse of their lawsuit. As a result of O'Donnell's actions, Each congregation in this county suffered a palpable injury, in fact, in its own right, consisting of the invasion of their legally protected interest in the privacy of its privileged communications. We have a right to speak privately with our lawyer, intrusion upon seclusion, and disclosure of those unlawfully intercepted communications causing reputational harm. There's a couple things that my first reaction when I saw that is like, reputational harm? This guy listens in on your phone call and you're like, you've hurt our reputation by talking to people about what you heard. No. He's not the reason your reputation sucks. The reason your reputation sucks, according to all the evidence we have, is because you are covering up for child predators. That's why you have a bad reputation. If someone is trying to get that information out to the public, that is not the problem here. But also invasion of their privacy. I do get that there is attorney-client privilege, and like that, those meetings are supposed to be confidential. But also, Mark didn't hack his way into the call, right? He was invited to the Signal chat, if you know what I mean. So his argument is like, I didn't like invade your privacy. You invited me. I was there. You did not kick me out. I didn't do anything wrong. That is what Mark is basically saying. By the way, this is the lawsuit that the witnesses filed against him. And as you could see, look at number 72. O'Donnell's actions also adversely affect each congregation's ability to something, and seek future legal advice from its attorneys via remote means. Meaning, we can't talk to our lawyers via Zoom anymore because who knows who's listening in, and you are forcing us to incur wasted time and money because now we got to meet with our lawyers in person because Mark won't let us have Zoom calls. No, you can have Zoom calls. Like, maybe look at who's signed in before you start the call. Have you thought about that? That doesn't sound like an invasion of privacy problem. That sounds like old people who don't know how to use the computer problem to me. But anyway, they filed their lawsuit. It never crossed their mind they could just, not give out login information or be careful with how you dispense that information. But in this lawsuit, the thing that you should also know about it is how much money are they trying to get from him? And here's where it gets kind of frightening because they do this over and over. They say Mark broke 4 different laws. And this is just one of the things. Look at the whereas clause here. Whereas the plaintiffs, which is all of these Jehovah's Witnesses congregations in the county, we demand judgment in our favor and against Mark O'Donnell, and we want an award of damages in an amount more in excess of $700,000. That's just for one of the charges. They have 4 crimes they say Mark committed, and they want $700,000 for each of them, plus attorney's fees and other costs. So that's where we're at. Like, they are saying they are entitled to like $2.8 million plus legal fees because he violated wiretapping laws and privacy laws, and he ruined their reputation somehow. I still don't get that one. But again, I'm not even joking about the Signal chat thing. You know that story. Pete Hegseth and his people, they basically accidentally invited a journalist to join their Signal chat where they were discussing war plans. And the journalist is like, there's no way this is actually Pete Hegseth and those guys discussing war plans. Because, like, how come they don't know I'm here? Shouldn't they know I'm here? And he didn't say anything. And they discussed the war plans. And eventually he's like, oh, they actually are that dumb that they don't know they invited me onto this. And he wrote a story about that. That is what O'Donnell is now arguing in his response. He is saying, I didn't hack into anything. Let me show you what his lawyer's response was to all this. Here we go. Check this out. Look at the highlighted bit. Mr. O'Donnell did not violate any laws because he was invited to the meeting and because the plaintiffs waived any expectation of privacy they may have had with respect to the meeting. Like, as soon as you handed out that information, if someone has it and they're listening to you, you don't have this privacy. You've given out the information to join you. So this is kind of the argument Mark is making. He also says this is important. Mark says in that response, they were aware of his presence shortly after the phone call ended. Is it because they checked the logs? I don't remember. Is it because he was talking about it on YouTube? Well, at that point you figure, oh, now they figured it out. But here's what's important. They did not indicate any sort of concern at that point. They didn't tell him to take down his YouTube video where he discussed what was said until like a year later. So it couldn't have been that big of a deal. He also argued that a lot of the stuff he said in the YouTube video was stuff he knew before the call even occurred. So the reason I bring all this up right now is this week, Mark O'Donnell issued a press release where he says Jehovah's Witnesses sue the editor of this website for millions of dollars, which is true. And I just want to point you down here. In the litigation, the witnesses have demanded I name every Jehovah's Witness I've communicated with in the last 5 years regarding the faith of the witnesses. So, like, they want him to spill the beans about all the apostates who have come out to him, and probably including who invited you onto that phone call. Obviously, that would reveal my journalistic sources, and I will not do so. As a reporter, protecting my sources is essential. Because of this, I have been forced to hire expert legal counsel for my defense, with costs expected to be more than $150,000. But he says at the bottom here, my mission has always been to shed light on these crimes, force change, and do so without cost to the public. While I am limited in what I can say now, I'm grateful that the public can see what has happened for themselves. And he includes some of the stuff with the case. So that's where we are at right now. I will tell you, Mark O'Donnell has not asked anyone to make donations yet. Okay. There's a lot of people who want to pitch in, especially on the XJW subreddit. But right now, it seems like O'Donnell's goal is just to make sure people know what's going on. I did reach out to him for comment a few days ago. He did not get back to me. I'm kind of curious why he's putting this out there now, since the lawsuit and his response to the lawsuit, all that stuff happened like late last year. I'm not sure why he's putting this out there right now. So I'm curious about that. But even without those answers, this is a case worth watching. A journalist was given access to a phone call by a participant, and he reported on what he heard. And now a wealthy religious group is trying to bankrupt him and scare him away, I assume, from doing the work he does, which makes them look bad because he's interested in the facts. It's appalling behavior from a group of people who are only on that phone call because they were discussing with their lawyers how to deal with allegations involving children. That bad stuff that was committed by their leaders or covered up by their leaders. And instead of looking in a mirror and asking themselves, are we the bad guys here? They're going after the one person in the whole story who is actually doing everything in his power to help survivors and prevent further abuse. I believe Mark said that this is going to trial, and the trial date has been set for October. So that's the next time something big is going to happen, unless something changes before then. But it's worth keeping an eye on this, and I'll alert you if I hear anything more. But yeah, I'll leave it there. What questions we got for this story? The JW standard of evidence for abuse makes action nearly impossible. Consequently, abuse is not really dealt with and festers. And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong here. One of the things that the Jehovah's Witnesses have said is that if you want to make an allegation against someone, there's like a 2-witness rule. Like 2 people have to say, yes, this happened before anyone will take you seriously. And that means if there's a perpetrator and a victim, and the only person who's saying what happened is the victim, well, that's only 1 witness. Too bad you're out of luck. I mean, this is the sort of thing people have had to put up with in the witnesses. So yeah, their standard of evidence for abuse means they're really not equipped to handle this in any meaningful way. Also, the people you would talk to about this are not trained to do anything like this, making it even worse. And it's an insular community. by and large. So they don't want to involve law enforcement if they don't have to. There are varying rules about recording talks without permission. State laws vary. Yeah, and I'm not sure what the confidentiality thing is in Pennsylvania. It may be a two-party state. Both sides have to agree to be recorded. But again, Mark's argument is I was invited to the call. I did not illegally hack into it or join the call and record it without their permission. They knew it was being recorded. I knew it was being recorded. And again, I was invited to the phone call. So I think that's his argument there, that he didn't break any rules about recording the call or joining it, even if they didn't know he was there. Looking into an open window from a sidewalk is not an invasion of privacy. If they want privacy, they should take reasonable steps to make it so. Yeah, and in this case, you don't have to do anything weird. Do what everyone does when you're on a private video chat, which is go look at who's in the room and make sure it's the few of you. It's not that hard. If there's a name you don't recognize, a number you don't recognize, just kick that person off. Like, I've been on enough video calls to know how it works, and I'm older than 20, so I should not know how computers work. They can figure this out. If anyone other than a client was listening in on a client call of mine, I'd have a case. And this, I'm curious, and it sounds like you know what you're talking about if you're in this. But if that information about joining the client meeting was given to someone else by one of your clients, I don't know. Would you still have a case? And again, this is what they're hashing out in the courts. And Mark feels he's in the right here as a journalist, as someone who was given this information. I don't know. The child abuse part is more important. Yeah, than someone joining in on the phone call, I would agree. My interest is in the anti-Scientology area. The abuse to children is super dangerous in that cult. Kids are adults in little bodies. Yeah, I mean, we're not even getting into all the Scientology stuff. It's weird. I haven't heard anything about that group lately, which is never good. Like they kind of come and go in spurts in terms of when they're in the news. And if they are in the news, well, that can't be good. And if they are not in the news, oh no, that might be even worse. Privilege can be waived by a client, and the client waived it when they invited the third party in. Again, I don't know what the law is in this regard, but yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Thanks for that. All right, I'm going to jump to the next story. Give me 1 second here. All right. Let me introduce you to this guy. This guy is Josh Buice. B-U-I-C-E, Josh Buice. That rhymes with lice. Josh is, as you can probably guess, a very conservative Christian preacher. Let me give you some of his resume here. He's basically one of those trolls online, one of those right-wing Theo bros whose number one enemy is like wokeness and number two is Satan, pretty much. So he leads a church in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called Praise Mill, P-R-A-Y''S, Praise Mill Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. And a couple of years ago, he was so fed up with the Southern Baptist Convention that he issued this statement: why we are no longer an SBC church. This dude said, my church is leaving the Southern Baptist Convention, and I'll spare you the language here. It's because he said the Southern Baptists had basically gone too woke. They'd become too liberal. Somehow the anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-woman, historically racist organization had gone too far in accepting social justice. And why? Because they had accepted some amendment at their convention, like a symbolic gesture that said, hey, you guys, in the wake of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, we should consider intersectionality and critical race theory as they defined it. But they were saying maybe we should Keep in mind how race affects how people live their lives. And this dude is like, what? Think about race? That's woke. We're leaving the Southern Baptist Convention because how dare the SBC become too liberal? Anyway, so his church quit the Southern Baptist Convention. He actually went further than that because this is from Religion News Service writing about him. They said Josh Buice is one of the organizers of the 2018 Statement on Social Justice, which warned that liberal ideas about race, in particular critical race theory, and women's leadership, oh no, had infiltrated evangelical churches. The statement was issued a few months after a number of high-profile evangelical leaders had gathered in Memphis to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the death of Martin Luther King Jr. and to denounce racism in the modern church. And this dude, Josh Buice, is like, you're commemorating what now? And we're not celebrating that? What? That's too liberal. You all are too woke. I mean, you know how these people operate. They know one word in the English language. They repeat it ad nauseum. So that's this dude. He's also, in addition to that, he's the founder of a conservative Christian conference known as the G3 Conference. What does G3 stand for? I don't know. God, grace, gumball. I don't know. I don't care. It's some right-wing Christian conference. It meets every 2 years. And it's a gathering of Reformed Baptists who go really hard to the right and go all in on the patriarchy and whatever you think they're going to believe. So here's my question to all of you. What type of scandal do you think just brought down Josh Buice? Because there was a scandal involving him this week. And oh man, he is like nowhere to be found this week. What scandal was it? Did it involve some other woman? No. Did it involve some other man? That would be amusing, but no. It's even dumber than that. I know. I see your comments. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for one person for pointing this out. G3 stands for gospel, grace, and glory, which are 3 words that do not have any connection to these people whatsoever. But what was the scandal that brought this man down? Well, Praise Mill Baptist Church and the elders at this church and the board members of the G3 conference, they issued a joint statement this week regarding Josh Buice. I mean, it's the same statement. You know it's a big deal. Let's look through the highlighted bits here. In recent weeks, the elders of our church uncovered irrefutable evidence that Dr. Buice has, for the past 3 years, operated at least 4 anonymous social media accounts, 2 anonymous email addresses, and 2 Substack platforms. These accounts were used to publicly and anonymously slander numerous Christian leaders, including faithful pastors, some of whom have spoken at G3 conferences. He's also trashed several Praise Mill Baptist Church elders and others. These actions were not only sinful in nature, but deeply divisive, causing unnecessary suspicion and strife within the body of Christ, and particularly within the eldership of PMBC. So this dude was using alt accounts. He was using his Finsta to basically trash all of his people. So they're already at the hard right Christian conference. And then he goes on his secret Twitter account and he's like, did you hear what that idiot just said on the panel I was just on? Like, listen, I operate one Substack and I operate one Twitter account, and it is way too damn much. This guy has 4 kids. How does he manage all of these alt accounts? And how does he have time to post on them and just shit all over everyone he knows all the time? Unbelievable. Like, I'm kind of amazed at how this dude has been doing this for so many years. But then it gets even funnier because it turns out all of these old people, the elders of this church, I assume they're older, they all said, by the way, we knew this was going on a couple of years ago. We had a hunch about it. What else did they say? Not highlighted, but at the top. Dr. Bice had been asked on multiple occasions over the past 2 years whether he had any connection to these anonymous accounts. Just stop there for a second. That means there was some anonymous account shitposting about all these Christians, and somehow people were like, it sounds like it's that dude. And they went to him and they're like, dude, is this you? And he's like, no. In each case, he denied any knowledge of them. On Sunday evening, May 4th, after clear and comprehensive evidence emerged linking the accounts directly to him, I would like to know more about that, the elders of the church confronted Josh. What did he do when they confronted him with the evidence? For 2 hours, he continued to deny his involvement. Only after further evidence was presented, how much evidence do they have? I am dying to know how they figured this one out. After much pleading with him to walk in the light, did Josh finally confess to his actions? Swear to God, this is the dumbest scandal to bring someone down. Since then, Josh has acknowledged his sin, expressed sorrow, and asked for forgiveness. Of course he did. While Josh has acknowledged with the elders that he is presently disqualified from serving as an elder, we do not believe at this time that his sin is necessarily permanently disqualifying. So, just so we're on the same page here, they confronted him with the evidence, and he's like, it's not me. Okay, here's more evidence. And he's like, still not me. They're like, here's a giant pile of evidence. And then later, and I don't know if we're talking like seconds later or days later, he's like, all right, you got me. It was totally me. But also, Jesus. And they're like, oh, he said the word. All right, we forgive you. And then they say at the end, okay, he can't be an elder right now. But like, I don't know, maybe in 2 weeks when everyone forgets this story, we can totally have him back and everything will be cool. That's how dumb this scandal is, how dumb it was for him to deny it, and how dumb their reaction is, where they're like, all right, I mean, I know this looks bad, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, you guys. I swear to God, it's the dumbest scandal ever. So here's what is really annoying. That joint statement does not offer any links to those accounts. They don't mention what his alts were. I would like to know which Twitter accounts were his. What did he say under those other accounts that he felt he could not say in person as himself? I wish I could know that, but they don't say which ones they are. I will tell you, a bunch of people on the internet are like, I think it's this Twitter account, which just shitposts all the time. And they link to a few of them. And it turns out all of those alt accounts all got deactivated around the same time recently, suggesting, sounds like this dude is like, oh no, they caught me. I'm going to get rid of all my Twitter accounts all at once. And everything disappeared off the internet. But I don't know for sure which of those accounts are his. I don't know what Substacks are his. And the church did not mention it. But even though they have this irrefutable evidence, they don't want to share this with anybody somehow. Weird. So anyway, as for the G3 conference, again, it's every 2 years, and they were going to have the meeting later this year. They announced that this year's conference has been canceled. I saw one tweet from someone who said, but I already bought tickets and like plane tickets, and they can't refund the plane tickets, so that dude's just out of luck. And then the ministry said this. I don't know if I have this here. I'll see if I could pull this up somehow. At the time, the G3 ministry said, all right, you guys, we know this looks bad, but quote, his content will remain accessible via the G3 website. Because this dude has written a lot of blog posts for the conference. And they're like, all right, we know this is bad, but we're going to keep all his articles up because, I don't know, SEO. We want to make sure people find us. And then I think only today or yesterday did they finally add another update where they're like, all right, we're taking down all of his stuff from our website. Because apparently they still thought he was worth listening to. Even, I guess, when he's posing as himself, he's worth listening to. It seems like they're only angry he used anonymous accounts to go after their own people. That's the thing they're mad about. It's not that he lied about it. It's not that he denied it. Like, I don't know what they're mad about. Are they mad that they confronted him and he said, it's not me? Are they mad that he was just shit posting people in general? That he denied it even when confronted with the evidence? I want to know what sin they are actually mad about. I don't know. The fact that this guy, though, for now, is no longer working with his church as an elder and is no longer running this conference, who cares? Those are not losses for anybody because those groups do things I don't like. But also, both of them seem to leave the door open for this guy to return as soon as, he goes through a time of repentance and forgiveness, and really everyone else just forgetting that this all happened. Because what is he? The only thing he is an immature troll with the mindset of a teenage bully who cosplays as a religious leader. That's who Josh Buice is. What's funny about this, too, is this is hardly the first time we have seen Christian pastors do anonymous shitposting online. Do you all remember Pastor Mark Driscoll? He's still around. He's still doing the alpha male, I'm Joe Rogan, but the Christian version of it, or something like that. But this is from a CNN article from a decade ago when this became news. According to Christianity Today, Mark Driscoll had trolled online discussion forums under the pseudonym William Wallace II, like in Braveheart, and lambasted the supposed rise of male lesbians. Fee-man, men who act like women in his definition, and men who allow their wives to nag at them. That's what he was doing when he thought he was anonymous. He actually also complained about living in a pussified nation. The funniest thing about Mark Driscoll is he put out a book where he was like, I have done some things I regret in the past. For example, I used to go on comment boards on the internet and pose as like William Wallace. I don't do that anymore, though. And people looked at that book and they're like, wait a minute, he did what now? And they realized, wait, all the forums that he posted on are still active, and we can totally see what he posted online under his pseudonym. And they realized he said all this horrible stuff, and that's why it became a scandal a decade ago, because that's how weak and pathetic Mark Driscoll is. But he's not the only one either. Do you all remember? I think we talked about this just a couple of weeks ago, but there is another Christian pastor by the name of Dale Partridge. And look at what he posted at the very top. Alpha male Christian bro. Women are designed to be led. If a woman refuses male leadership, she will either end up alone or with a beta male, which is a very bad thing. Beta males always leave women feeling insecure, which makes her prone to leaving him for an alpha male and leaves him prone to leaving her for a submissive woman. Okay, weirdo. Someone chimes in. I try very hard to lead my wife sacrificially, but I suspect that somehow I would still be labeled as a beta male. So that's fun. To which Dale responds, my husband serves by leading. He sacrifices by leading. He loves by leading. This dude forgot to sign out of his actual account and sign into his fake account where he pretends he's a submissive woman. Love that one. I know some commenters like, what does that even mean? I don't know what it means. None of this stuff means anything. There's one more version of this. Do y'all remember the Republican elected official from Pennsylvania who said a couple years ago, what Trump built in 4 years, Biden will destroy in 4 months? And then someone chimes in, are you kidding me? Obama built it in 8 years. Trump took credit for it, blah, blah, blah. And then what does the dude write in response? I'm a black gay guy, and I can personally say that Obama did nothing for me. My life only changed a little bit, and it was for the worse. Everything is so much better under Trump, though. I feel respected, which I never do when Democrats are involved. And Dean Browning, the white dude from Pennsylvania, knows that because he's a black gay guy who's forgot to sign into his alt account. So many good ones. Like, this is just a habit of conservative extremists. They all have these alternative accounts. Usually, it's to boost their main account or go after their critics or anyone who isn't as extreme as they are. Because the thing is, if your arguments were good and you made them in a public forum on social media, you wouldn't have to do that because other people would be like, wow, this is a really smart thing someone said. I'm going to share it. But these idiots have nothing smart to say, so they put it out there and no one's sharing any of their stuff. So they create these alternative things, alternative profiles to boost their own content because they're not smart enough to write anything other people actually want to share. So for guys like Bice also, it seems like his belief is that lying is okay as long as you're doing it to promote religious extremism. One thing I saw when I was researching this that was really funny, someone chimed in and said, oh, this is hilarious because 6 years ago, he was kicked out of the G3 conference. Let me see if I could pull this up. This is what Josh wrote to this couple. Over the last year or so, your online interactions, accusations of me and other G3 speakers, as well as your positions have caused me to believe that it would be wise for you to not plan on attending the G3 in January. Josh Bice kicked out that person for being mean to him online. And he's like, well, you can't attend the conference. And look at where he is now. He's been doing the exact same thing under a pseudonym. There was also this old tweet of his being shared quite a bit this week. Josh says, effeminate is hiding behind a mask and refusing to be a man. Just saying. Don't try to decipher that. It's grammatically weird. But also, if he's like, oh yeah, effeminate men, they hide. They hide themselves. They're afraid of speaking the truth. Well, guess what this guy just did? Multiple times behind multiple personas, apparently. So I will close the story with just one thought, which is the statement that was put out by the church elders and the G3 board. It made it sound like they're the good guys and they caught this one bad dude doing something he should not have been doing. I think that's the wrong way to look at this because all of these people were totally fine promoting Josh Bice's utterly deranged views up until now. Like they only stopped this week and they're still promoting all the same views, just not him. So, and they'll plan to promote him too in like a couple weeks when this all dies down. So I would like to know, are these groups bothered by his anonymity, his denials when confronted about it, or the substance of what he said under those alt accounts? Because I want to know what they're actually upset about. What are they embarrassed by? What do they think he did that was wrong? Because it doesn't sound like it's his beliefs, which are the worst thing about all of this. And without telling the public which accounts were his, we're not able to do the research ourselves either, which makes it easier for the next person to do what he's doing. Right? So if you're a Christian and you belong to either of these groups, the church, the conference, you go to any of that stuff, leave. Ditch both of these groups entirely. Don't just distance yourself from the one dude who got caught, because all of the people involved here are not looking good. All right, I'll pause there for a bit. What other questions we got? Oh, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. I appreciate that, LK. I'm stunned I wasn't too far off. This is the most benign scandal in the history of the church. So far, give it time. There, like, even with this dude, it's like, okay, fine, I really don't care about your alt accounts. I find it funny more than anything else. But man, the way they are treating this, like it's the biggest thing that has ever happened, is ridiculous. But also, if you're going to do that, tell us what the accounts were. Tell us what he said so people can decide whether the punishment fits the crime. How embarrassing must it be to have to hide behind multiple sock puppet accounts, right? Like, it's not like he's doing that for a good reason. He's doing it so he can just trash the people who are signing up to come to his conference and the other pastors who are like 99% aligned with his horrible views. That's the sort of people he's trashing this whole time. It's ridiculous. Like, why can't, if you're a pastor and you're like, yeah, you have to be a manly man and confident, then just trash these people yourself when you're on stage. What are you trying to hide behind? It's ridiculous. Can a Twitter post leave behind an IP address? That one's above my pay grade. I don't know. Sometimes screenshots get saved, but sometimes if someone deletes their account or deactivates it, it's pretty hard to, as far as I can tell, to figure out what they have posted. I've gotten into a habit of if someone posts something really dumb and it's someone I don't like, I take a screenshot because I'm pretty sure they're going to get rid of it soon. Same with videos on YouTube or something. This is so funny because my ex-husband did and does the exact same thing online on high school wrestling boards. What? He had like 6 personas that all interacted to make it look real. To what end? Why are we pretending to be 6 people on high school wrestling boards? Are we trying to trash the other high school wrestlers? Is that what he's doing? I have to know, Kim. Tell me everything. I bet you this is the least of his skeletons. I won't even speculate. I mean, again, my problem with this dude is not really, I don't care about his private life. I care about the stuff he actively says as himself, which is way worse to me than, I don't know, shitting on these other people behind an anonymous account. Like, I have plenty of reason not to like this guy. I felt the same way to an extent about Jerry Falwell Jr. Like, I don't care what that guy does in the bedroom, even though he's a hypocrite. I'm more disturbed by the stuff he does right out in the open, and I think that should be why everyone doesn't like the guy. You don't need a sex scandal for that guy. Just go after the stuff he says on stage all the time. 5 out of 5 on the Lauren Boebert stupidity scale. Seems accurate. All right, I'm jumping to the next story. Kim, you're going to tell us everything soon. Okay, I'm going to jump to a different story here. 1 second. All right. This one is not nearly as serious as all the other ones, but it involves doggies, so you will like it. So last year, the Attorney General of Kentucky, his name is Russell Coleman, he posted this weird tweet about how his office's dog, like they have a crime dog, completed a training session at Ark Encounter. And I'll show you this. He posted this on Twitter and Facebook. But look at this. Last week, Canine Charity completed a training session at Ark Encounter with her colleagues from the Kentucky State Police and the Boone County Sheriff's Office. These collaborations are vital to protecting Kentucky families. And he has these pictures. I'll show you that one up close. Here are those dogs in front of Ark Encounter, that Noah's Ark dumb replica that says the Earth is 6,000-ish years old. So this is what they were posting. And again, the question here is, what are we actually doing here? It is possible that Ark Encounter is one of the larger gathering places in that part of Kentucky. And even though it is a Christian ministry, maybe it's just a host for a secular event, for a dog training, for police dog training. That's possible. I don't like it, but that's possible. It's kind of like when a megachurch is host to a public high school graduation ceremony. They shouldn't do it. The public schools should not do it. But it is possible that a megachurch is the biggest venue in town. And as long as there's no active proselytizing going on, it's probably not illegal. But anyway, I don't know what's going on at this training, right? So we don't know. But then this past February, Ken Ham at Answers in Genesis, who's not very smart, he decided to just brag about what was going on at these dog training sessions. So this is what he posted in February. AIG, Answers in Genesis, the group that owns Ark Encounter, impacts law enforcement with Canine Conference. If we scroll down here, at the Ark Encounter earlier this week, our Department of Public Safety hosted its 3rd annual Canine Conference. 49 canine teams from across the country, along with 2 international teams, participated in a 4-day event. Again, that might be okay. It just depends on what is being taught at these sessions. I wish there was a way to know what was being taught. I do appreciate this comment that I just saw. Were they training the dogs to sniff out bullshit? No, because the dogs would like keel over at that point because the whiff would be overwhelming. But look at this then. Then he starts posting pictures, which I'll get to in a second. But then he kept talking because he's Ken Ham. And look at this. The conference continues to grow every year as the word gets out in the canine handler community. Not only will this kind of training help save lives, but the officers who participated were able to hear the gospel and the message of the truth of God's word. Praise the Lord. So Ken Ham is like, oh yeah, we totally worked Jesus into this training seminar for dogs. And it's not that they were trying to convert the dogs, but they were clearly trying to convert the humans behind the dogs. And it's like, you were not supposed to say that. You could tell the Attorney General very purposely did not say that. But Ken Ham's like, you guys, look at how we converted all these cops. Because he's not smart. So it was a dog training event full of religious preaching. And if Ark Encounter wanted to host an event like that, they are within their rights to do it. But it's not okay for government agencies to take part in that. And if only there was a way to prove they did. Oh, wait, Ken Ham had pictures. This is one of the pictures. I'll zoom in here. But this is what Ken Ham posted. You could see right over here, Kentucky State Police. They were at this training. There's another picture he posted too, which was fascinating. Check this one out. This is just, they're at the merch table and getting information. But if you zoom in here, look at who's sponsoring this event. You could see it in the background. Tactica Ministries. Tactica, whichever way you want to pronounce it. But it turns out that group was helping Ark Encounter run these seminars. And Tactica, that's what I'm going to call it, however you want to pronounce it. It stands for Teaching Authorities Christian Truth in Central America. Like their whole thing is, yeah, we go to where the brown people are and we convert them down there. But also, hey, we're in Kentucky, so we can do it to the white people too. And in fact, one of the government officials in the state of Kentucky who works with this ministry, he gave a sermon earlier this year where he talked about the work they do. And listen to what he says about the relationship between government agencies and his group.
They just got done with this. They are linked in now with the Ark Encounter. So they have partnered with the Ark Encounter on lots of different things. But this was a canine conference that they hold there every year. So they have canine officers that come from around the country to train with their dogs at the Ark Encounter. The Ark Encounter hosts them. And they do the same thing with those officers that they do with their trainings overseas. Those officers can earn things by memorizing verses. They're preaching the gospel to them. And so through doing some of these specialized trainings, they've come up with ways that they can continue to grow the ministry here in the United States.
So I don't know if you could hear everything he was saying, but he said when those officers come to the training, they can earn things by memorizing Bible verses. They are preaching the gospel to them. And so through doing these trainings, we can grow the ministry in the United States. So all of these people involved are saying out loud what they should not be saying out loud. It turns out there's a watchdog who really focuses on Ark Encounter. It's a guy named Dan Phelps. He's a former paleontologist. He has been like the guy. I've relied on him when it comes to what the hell's going on at Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum. We know how much money Ark Encounter makes every month because of Dan's work. Well, he wrote up an article about this at a website called Panda's Thumb. And one of the, here we go. He wrote about the training a couple months ago, but let me point you down here. He filed an open records request, and it showed that Kentucky taxpayers paid approximately $225 to train one officer. And that doesn't include money from other agencies. And one of the other things Dan found is that when these officers signed up for the Ark Encounter canine training, they got like a whole welcome package. I don't know if it's an email or what, but it's like, hey, welcome to our training stuff. And it's from a staffer with Answers in Genesis. And look at what he says. AIG, Department of Public Safety, makes no effort to hide who we are. ... More importantly, though, we care about you as an individual. God created all of us in his image. Due to our sin, and we are all sinners, Romans, ... I don't think that's grammatically correct, but whatever. Lots of Bible verses, nothing about public safety. They don't care about that, but a lot of copy-pasted Bible verse bullshit. So this is what they're sending to the cops who sign up for this. None of these cops can pretend that they did not know Christian preaching was a big part of this event. You know what I mean? So that's one thing Dan discovered. And by the way, Dan also got a copy of the itinerary for this conference. And look at this. According to the itinerary, a good deal of the first day of training from like 2 till 7 at night involves signing in. That takes 3 minutes. And roaming the Ark. It's just a field trip to explore creationism. This visitation, combined with the speaker's bios and other activities such as lunchtime testimonials, shows that religious instruction and evangelism of law enforcement officers was a substantial portion of the canine training. The dogs are distractions. You get what I'm saying? They're saying they're all going here to help train their dogs to help, catch crime. But really, it's taxpayer-funded conversions of the cops on the public's dime. Oh, and by the way, there are some dogs nearby. Unbelievable that this is actually happening. So the Freedom from Religion Foundation has sent a letter to the, where did they send it to? The Kentucky State Police. But basically, you can see what it says right here. Sending employees to train with a religious organization and only a religious organization is unconstitutional. We ask the Kentucky State Police to investigate and cease sending staff and resources to participate in a religious group's events. And they also say later on here, where to go, at the very end, it is unconstitutional and unwarranted to send public employees to participate in religious exercises. Take immediate action, end this partnership, protect everyone's rights, et cetera, et cetera. As far as I know, the Kentucky State Police has not responded to that letter. But the bottom line here is that taxpayer-funded cops should not be attending worship sessions under the guise of dog training. It's not like there are no secular canine training options in the state of Kentucky. Tax dollars should not be spent promoting Christianity or answers in Genesis. It's not complicated. And I'll give you one bit of good news, which is that the Louisville Courier-Journal just published a massive article about everything I am telling you here. And they detailed even more connections between the police agencies and the Christian ministries. Reporter's name is Josh Wood, and he points out in his piece that Ark Encounter and Tactica are not the only ones bragging about shoving Jesus into these trainings. Let me pull this up here. Look at this paragraph in the article. Northern Kentucky's Fort Thomas Police Department, which sent an officer and a German short-haired pointer named Bullet to the Ark Encounter's 3rd annual Canine Conference in February, summed up the event as 4 days of training, speeches, and gospel sermons. They're openly talking about, yeah, we listened to those gospel messages when we went to the canine training. What else is in this article? In a statement to the Courier-Journal, this is unbelievable. The reporter got the state police to talk. And what did their spokesperson say? The trooper who attended told us that evangelical speeches and scripture memorization were conducted during breaks and not during canine training, and they were totally voluntary. No, they weren't. 1, there's peer pressure. 2, this is happening at Ark Encounter. You don't accidentally go to Ark Encounter and then come away like, you guys, did you hear these people only believe the earth is 6,000 years old? It's not something you learn on a bathroom break. It is built into the entire place. This idea that, oh, they only did the Bible stuff during breaks. No, they didn't. They didn't say, okay, we're going to pause here from the canine training, throw in a little Bible stuff, and we're back on the clock. No, like it's clearly part of the entire program. And you can't say it's entirely voluntary. Like, what are you talking about? You can't say it's voluntary when everyone is there around you and you can't just walk out of the room when the Jesus stuff is happening, right? Everyone involved made clear that this is part of the training session. It wasn't optional in any meaningful sense of the word. There was one other thing I wanted to show you in this article. Here we go. This is from a Boone County sheriff's spokesperson. He told the reporter that the county's canine handlers were invited to attend the conference for free. Okay, no taxpayer dollars. He said the religious aspects were only a very small part of the conference and that the officers were not required to participate in them. Again, no, it was not a small part of the conference. Creationism is not a small part of what Answers in Genesis does. And also, what, they're not required to participate in them. Yeah, I'm guessing they're not going to kick you out if you don't listen. But also, hey, while you're here, we're just going to shove some Bible verses at you. You can't really avoid that. So this idea that it's totally optional is BS completely. Ark Encounter does not minimize proselytizing ever. It is what they do. All right. And one last thing in this article that I wanted to share. Here we go. Here's how much we know it's not optional. In a 2022 video posted by a church, Tactica's founder, another police officer, said they enter into agreements with governments in Central American countries like Costa Rica and Ecuador, where they offer to train police, but only if they are allowed to openly proselytize during the training. These people are bribing Central American countries saying, hey, we'll train your cops for free as long as we get to try to treat them as target practice for Christianity. Like, it's such a deceptive, awful way to treat anybody. But like Tactica is saying, yeah, we provide training. It's what we do. But also we're totally going to try to convert these people. They're the people that were doing these canine trainings in Kentucky. And now you're telling us, oh, no, it was optional. All the Jesus stuff came during breaks. All of these Christians are lying because nothing in their religion told them that's a bad thing. I don't know. Is it the cops who are lying? Is it the Christian ministry that's lying? Or are they all lying? Because that's kind of what they do. I don't know. And the worst thing about this is I don't know that there's anything that can be done to stop this because the state police don't look like they give a damn. What are you going to do? File a lawsuit? I mean, that feels like a long shot here. Doesn't strike me as the most egregious violation of church-state separation, but also no one's arguing about the core problem here. Taxpayers in Kentucky are funding faith-based training seminars for police dogs. And they're run by people whose primary goal is not to train the dogs, but to convert humans and spread their version of anti-gay, anti-woman Christianity. Like, no non-Christian group would ever be given that opportunity. So the message from Kentucky law enforcement when they do this sort of thing is that Christianity is above the law and the rest of you are screwed. All right, I'll pause there. What questions we got here? Bark Encounter. I'm so mad. I did not think of that first. If he ate old rotten eggs, would he become green eggs and Kent ham? Stop it. Stop it with your puns. Sorry if I ruined the joke, but isn't the Ark Encounter protest supposed to happen sometime soon or may have happened already? That is a very good question to ask. I do not have my calendar in front of me. However, I believe the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend is when they are having their, I think it's annual protest of Ark Encounter, not because they don't have a right to exist, but because they're lying. And people should know in the community that there are some people who actually care about science and facts, and it's just not any of those people. I think if you search Ark Encounter protest on Facebook or otherwise, you can get the details, but it's happening over a Memorial. Is it? No, I lied. Is it Memorial Day weekend or is it July 4th weekend? Oh my God, someone figured this out. I'm sorry if I said the wrong date. Maybe it's July 4th weekend. But it is in the future. Sorry, that's what happens when I don't have stuff in front of me. We got an answer here. Thank you. July 6th. July 6th. All right, so it's later on. All right, what else we got? I don't know. The cops are probably like, hey, there's a huge empty parking lot we can use. If that was the case, that Ark Encounter had this big space to use, we would not be having this discussion right here. Again, I don't love it, but if that's where they could find open space, I get it. And I get why Ark Encounter would say, yeah, we'll give you the space. Go rent it, go use it. We don't care, whatever. I get that. That's not what is happening here. They are going to Ark Encounter so that Christians can try to convert the cops. That's what is happening here. How about Richard Dawkins' latest self-embarrassment? Listen, when you ask a question like that, you have to narrow it down. He's done many. I know he's published a couple of articles this week. That's right. You messaged me and you shared that article with me. This is an article I believe Dawkins published in The Spectator, which is like a right-wing UK tabloid. And yeah, he thinks he acts like children are having body parts chopped off, and this is just a regular occurrence. That is not what is happening with trans children. This is what he does now. He's like J.K. Rowling. It doesn't matter what you did in the past. Now your entire life is dedicated to talking about trans people and trashing them because you don't understand what's going on. It is frustrating. The reason I didn't comment on it otherwise is because I feel like I've already said my piece. You can find the videos on this channel, but like, he's not saying anything new. It's the same misinformation that he keeps putting out there. And unfortunately, his supporters, the Center for Inquiry, which works with him, they don't care about any of this. So he just gets to keep lying because the people he surrounds himself with in his bubble don't have the decency to tell him he's just like a bigot now. Sad. All right, I'm going to jump to a different story. Oh, this is a disturbing one. Fair warning. All right, give me 1 second here. Okay. I'm going to talk about a missionary organization, a Christian missionary organization, and it used to be called New Tribes Mission. And their whole goal is we're going to go find uncontacted, isolated tribes around the world and like sneak into the jungle where these people haven't had human contact in forever. And we're going to try to convert them. Because like if there's an uncontacted tribe, the thing they need more than anything else is Jesus. Like these people have been doing fine for thousands of years, but apparently they were missing out because they didn't read the book in your book club. So they did this in countries like Brazil, in the Amazon, they did it in the Philippines. And what would happen is members of this organization would set up, like they would all travel to the location, all the missionary families, and the adults would go off to the jungles to try to convert these tribes. And their children would stay back home at a boarding school and get their education, their Christian education. The problem is that the staffers at some of these schools, they were called the dorm dads. They were later accused of some pretty horrible things by the children. So, spoiler warning, this is disturbing stuff I'm going to talk about. In one case that we have heard about, a man who was in charge of educating these kids, he hid a seashell in his bathing suit and then told the little girls to find it. That same guy would tuck a girl into bed in the same room as his own daughter and then assault that child and then tell her, oh, this is our secret. So very disturbing stuff. Another case, a woman said her own father abused her and her roommates for many years, and she told her dorm mother about it when she was 15, years later. And what happened as a result of that? Well, New Tribes Mission sent some leaders to the school to investigate, and they told her, hey, shut your mouth. They said if she didn't keep quiet about it, and I'm quoting here, my dad would be thrown in a Filipino jail. And her father and their family was sent back to Missouri for therapy with a church-approved counselor. And then 2 weeks later, they were declared healed and sent right back to the mission. So the reason we know this stuff, and it is disturbing, is because several years ago, NBC News ran a giant article about this organization. Look at the date line on this thing right here. This is from 2019. Ungodly Abuse, the Lasting Torment of the New Tribes Missionary Kids. And the reporters at NBC News spoke to several children who grew up in this environment and what they had to go through and all that. And look at this. The women say New Tribes covered up the abuse for years and scared the victims into silence by telling stories of Africans going to hell because they didn't know about Jesus, or missionaries ending up in foreign prisons if the allegations ever got out. Basically saying, hey, listen, you got to keep quiet about this, because if your parents and these adults are not doing this work, all these brown people over here, these black people, brown, they're going to end up in hell. And that's on you. It's your fault. So they basically use religion to blackmail these children into silence. Super disturbing stuff. But this is what they did. So that was in 2019. They spoke with 5 women who said they were victims of New Tribes Mission employees in the 1980s and 1990s. So years earlier, something we learned about is that knowing about some of these allegations, the organization actually conducted an independent review into one of its schools in Senegal. And that review found a culture of systemic abuse that involved more than 20 kids. And by the time NBC News spoke with some of those survivors, it was a decade later. Their assailants had never been punished for what they did. In fact, this is what one of the women said here. You could see this. Sorry about that. That was my fault. The scariest thing is thinking they're still out there, said one woman who said she was abused by the dorm dad at the Philippine school. Who knows what has happened since they've been back? Yeah, that is incredibly scary. So one of the attackers, NBC News found, was just living in Georgia, living his life, occasionally preaching at a local church. No consequences for that guy. So how bad was this situation? Consider this. When the independent investigators looked into this matter, they found an internal policy from 1992 that said, here's what we should do if there are allegations of abuse. And I am not joking here. Here's how disturbing it is. I want to pull this up so you know I'm not making this up. Here's what that advice said from 1992. If the abuser, if it is a homosexual act with the child, the person will be dismissed immediately and may never be considered for membership in the mission again. If it's a heterosexual act, so an adult was abusing a child of the opposite sex, the person will be dismissed immediately, but could be considered for ministry again in the future, depending on the case. If it occurs in the field, it's not necessary. You guys, come on. If it happens out there, don't report it to the country we're in or to the US, because, you might hurt the mission. So, shh. They were seriously more bothered by the fact that a dorm dad might sexually abuse a boy, but they had a way for him to come back if he sexually abused a girl. That's what these people were doing. It is so messed up. But that investigation also made specific recommendations, and they're common sense suggestions. All abusers, all alleged abusers, they need to be fired. Authorities need to be alerted about any misconduct, and the group needs to fund counseling costs for survivors. Yeah, all of that is basic for what you do. And New Tribes Mission said, don't worry, we are implementing these changes and we're improving our policies to protect kids, and we're putting into place recurring child safety training for all members, so everyone knows how to deal with this issue. And they also said they would report 2 of the named abusers to law enforcement. But NBC News asked law enforcement, hey, did you hear about like Bob? And they're like, we have no idea who you're talking about. NBC News said local law enforcement had no idea an accused person was living within their jurisdiction. Now, what about the counseling? They said they would offer survivors counseling. Well, one of those survivors said, yeah, New Tribes Mission paid for my counseling, but then they stopped because they said I reached a financial limit. So then New Tribes said, and the last thing is New Tribes said, hey, independent agency that just investigated us, yeah, we're going to fire you. We're done with you now. You did everything you needed. So they stopped working with them. And then, after all that, you know what they did? They changed their name from New Tribes Mission to Ethnos 360. They rebranded because the old brand had gotten so tainted. It is ridiculous, right? I wanted to bring up one other thing. Let me see if I could find this really quick. Ethnos 360 issued a statement about all this. And let me pull this up here. Here we go. This is their statement on their website now. NBC News story follow-up from Ethnos 360. And blah, 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 blah. Where's the thing? We'd like to apologize for all those people. Yeah. It happened 30 years ago, you guys. Calm down. We've offered counseling funds. I'm skipping ahead to here. We recognize that mistakes have been made over the course of our history. Here's the thing. There were so few laws or processes in place to protect children. Don't worry, though. Today's leaders have a different and better understanding and training to address abuse issues than was available to the leaders during those early days. Back in the day, you see, if we knew there was, a child predator in our midst, we were like, oh man, you should stop doing that. Anyway, how was your day? But today we know better and we tell that person, hey, now stop it. Jesus is watching, so you know everything's okay now. So that was their response to the NBC News story, clearly not inspiring a lot of confidence. It is disturbing to me that they said, yeah, we made mistakes. Like I told you what some of those things were. They were not just mistakes. They were much more disturbing than that. So the bottom line is that 2019 report from NBC News came out. Ethnos 360 came out with a response saying, we're doing better. We're all good now. Don't worry about it. And then everything got better. Right? Of course not. Because NBC News did a follow-up report on this. And check this out. This is from 2024. This is the date. You can see it right here. September 30th, 2024. And look at the headline here. Christian group Ethnos 360 accused of failing to protect a girl from abuse years after significant child safety training. So basically this story said, yeah, remember all those promises they made? It didn't work. The abuse continued, and this time it happened in the United States. All right. And here's the story that they kind of talked about in this case. It turns out there was a girl, her family of missionaries was living with another family of missionaries. And they were working for Ethnos 360 in like their IT department, but they were living in like a group home. So there were two families there. And the girl says the girl in the other family, who was also a child, that girl abused her. And the victim here said in 2016, that other girl, we were both 9 years old, but this took place over the course of several years. And I'll just scroll down so you can see this for yourself here, because this victim, she filed a lawsuit against the organization. Look at the second paragraph. The lawsuit says the abuse took place over several years and ranged from unwanted touching of the survivor's chest and genital area to penetration of her vagina with a stick and hairbrush. Again, this is a 9-year-old girl doing this to another 9-year-old girl. And the lawsuit accuses Ethnos 360 of failing to provide any education or training regarding anything related to peer-on-peer abuse to anyone living on their campus, and failing to adequately investigate abuse allegations. And let's say there was someone trained in this stuff. One of the things that would come up is, obviously, this is a very different situation than an adult male doing this to a child. Different situation, but if there is like a child doing this to another child, a trained professional would be like, why would you even know to do any of those things? Where did you learn these ideas from? Because maybe we need to look into that. But there was no one trained to even look into any of this at the time. And according to the lawsuit, the girl who was abusing the victim, she may have been doing it to other children as well. And importantly, she may have been a victim of abuse herself. But Ethnos 360, according to the lawsuit, made no effort to figure out where she would have learned about that conduct from. And the lawsuit also says the girl's family, the victim's family, told the ministry's director of child safety, Brian Coombs, about all of this, but he didn't do anything to stop it from continuing to happen. Not only did he allow the perpetrator to be around other girls by herself, he told the survivor's family that what occurred was not abuse, but just inappropriate sexual behavior between peers. And they were really mad to hear that from him, so they took their concerns to the CEO of the organization. And guess what happened when they did that? Discouraged, her parents met with Ethnos 360's then CEO Larry Brown in 2022 to discuss the situation. Brown allegedly told them to leave things between God and others because it would be hard on everyone to redo everything. So the CEO of the whole group does not care about this stuff. That's what the allegation is anyway. So since that time, since that lawsuit was filed, Ethnos 360 has tried to have this case dismissed in court. They say it is not our problem because none of this stuff happened under our supervision. It happened at their private homes, even though those homes are on Ethnos 360's property. Like, you would think all these allegations and allegations upon allegations about the ministry ignoring the allegations, eventually you would think this ministry is going to either shut down or finally take this stuff seriously for once, right? No. And the reason I bring all this up is because guess what happened just a couple of weeks ago? NBC News published yet another article. Look at the date line, April 30th, 2025. They published yet another article about this organization, Christian organization, long plagued by allegations of sex abuse, faces another lawsuit. They're dealing with a different one than the ones I've already told you about. Unbelievable. This one is as damning as the other ones because now they've been sued for not helping a child, despite saying publicly they would do that. And this story basically says that there was a girl who was 5 years old in 2005. She was living in Indonesia with her family, and they shared a house with another family, as they do. And that guy, the other adult, he had a daughter who was this girl's age. And check out what's happening here. Here we go. McLean, the girl's name is Kayla McLean in the story. And she says she was around 5 years old in 2005 when she met her alleged abuser, Nate Horling, according to the lawsuit. Like McLean and her family, Horling lived with his wife and kids in housing in Indonesia, provided by New Tribes Mission. He had a child about McLean's age. The two girls would play together. The alleged abuse by Horling started with inappropriate touching while the two girls were playing together. Afterward, Horling would allegedly tell McLean he was sorry and instructed her not to tell anyone and blamed her for what occurred. So he allegedly, he told this girl, the girls, it was hot. It was Indonesia. They had taken their clothes off. And apparently this guy tells Kayla she has a pretty body and it made him want to do things. Look at this. This is from the lawsuit, number 26. Horling told plaintiff that she had a very pretty body when her clothes were off and that it made him want to do things with it. She was a child. It gets worse down here. I don't have to read that one to you, but it gets very disturbing. Okay? In 2009, according to this girl, the two families moved to a different part of Indonesia, and this man physically assaulted her. She was playing with her friend, the guy's daughter, with their clothes off because it's hot there, and this guy enters the room. He tells Kayla to go into the closet, makes her lie on the floor. He assaults her, and then he tells Kayla what he had done was her fault because she had her clothes off. He denies all of this, for the record. And a few years later, Kayla then told her parents she was engaging in sexual conduct with other kids, which, again, like I said earlier, that could be a sign that you are being abused if you're doing stuff with other children. So her parents, rightly so, reported this behavior to the ministry's child safety team, but the response was muted. They treated this as exploration that they did not need to investigate. They never bothered to ask, where did Kayla learn to do any of this stuff? Because if they had asked her, she might have been able to say, oh, it was from that girl's dad. It wasn't until later on, when this girl was struggling with her own mental health issues, that she told her parents, oh, I was also abused by that other adult. And she did not want to file charges against him. She said her emotional state was too fragile at the time. But again, this is the sort of situation that if you had adults who were trained in these situations, they would know how to handle it. Ethnos 360 was not prepared. And she finally reported all this girl, when she was 21 years old, she reported all this to Ethnos 360 because they have a space on their website now where if you have any allegations of wrongdoing, you can report them through our website. And she thought she was sending the information to an independent investigator known as iHeart. She sent the thing to iHeart. She did not know that's just another extension of Ethnos 360. It's kind of like the Mormon Church's helpline where they say, hey, bishops, did someone confess something really bad to you? Give us a call and we'll help you through it. But it's really staffed by the church's own lawyers, and their primary obligation is protecting the church, not helping the people. Same sort of idea. And so how did that all go after she reported all this stuff? Let me see if I could find that here. After several hours-long interviews, Ethnos 360 allegedly offered no counseling to McLean and did not report the allegations to child protection agencies. The lawsuit accuses Ethnos 360 of negligence in failing to protect McLean from abuse and failing to provide adequate training to its employees to identify and report this abuse. It seeks unspecified damages and a jury trial. So in fact, the lawsuit says one of the investigators of iHeart, they told Kayla, hey, it would be really ideal if your memories turned out to be false so that, I want to make sure I could find this here because it's so disturbing. Look at this. Look at number 73 right here. Neither representative demonstrated much, if any, experience with investigating these disclosures. Neither behaved in a way that demonstrated knowledge or experience with a trauma-informed interview. For example, when Kayla shared that she at times felt as if the trauma made her crazy, the female investigator responded by telling her it would be good if Kayla's memories ended up being false so she could move on and not focus on it. Yeah, wouldn't that be great if I was gaslighting myself and then I wouldn't have to be dealing with this? The investigators later told Kayla that her situation was outside their mandate and they would give her files over to another team, and then Kayla had to go through more interviews. And all of this time, she said the investigators did not know what they were doing. They didn't behave in any way that suggested they knew what they were doing. it seems like Ethnos 360 wanted just to pretend to help victims than actually do anything of value to help them. So instead of cracking down on abusers, they just did everything in their power to look the other way. Honestly, at this point, it would probably be cheaper for them and easier to just do the right thing than try to cover up and not do the right thing over and over. But the organization is acting like if they acknowledge the very real problem they have in their midst, it might deter from their religious mission and turn off potential donors. That's me speculating. Like, I don't know what they're trying to do here. What they're doing is not different from like, you know how sometimes random people say they want to open a daycare facility? And it's like your heart may be in the right place, but if you can't protect children and you're not trained to deal with things that really do happen in real life, whether or not you want to admit that, you are better off not doing it at all than doing it poorly. And this is a missionary group that is doing everything poorly. They are so hell-bent on converting random people that they refuse to protect the families who carry out their orders. They would rather let children suffer than shut down altogether. And I don't know if that's because of their own religious delusions or they are just that ignorant. But either way, NBC News has done more for those survivors than this Christian ministry ever has. At this point, if you're donating to that organization, you're just abetting more crimes. I'll leave you with one last thing, which is one of the disturbing things I learned about this group in like 5 years ago. In 2020, COVID-19 sweeping across the world. Guess what New Tribes Mission did? Because they bragged about this on their website and it's still there. Ethnos 360 Aviation. They bragged about the fact that they came into possession of a helicopter. They said this is going to help us contact and convert isolated indigenous groups in the remote Western Amazon. They were going to use a helicopter to like fly into the Amazon, find those uncontacted tribes and like, I don't know, throw Bibles at them. But you remember John Allen Chow, that missionary who he decided to do the same thing off the coast of India on one of those islands. And then he went to that island that you're not supposed to go to. And he got shot and killed with bows and arrows and stuff. But the reason he was never supposed to go there in the first place is when you go visit a tribe that's been isolated for that long, those tribes are not immune to diseases the way you are. And by going there, you may be passing along some of those diseases and viruses, and you could destroy their entire community without even knowing it. That's why you don't go there. I don't care what your religious mission is. And these people are like bragging about this helicopter they got to go into the Amazon. Like just another example of this ministry putting their religious delusions ahead of common sense and basic decency. Oh, all right. I'm done with that story. What other questions we got here? We've rebranded. Please don't dead name us. Yeah, it's okay when it's a name change, only when it affects them. But, you know, it's too hard when you have to call trans people by their names. It's just gross that they think homosexuality is worse than child abuse. I mean, yeah. I could not believe it when I read that. Like, they could have just said, well, all abuse is wrong. Nope, they separated same-sex abuse from hetero abuse. Isn't one of the accusations that Christians use that being homosexual will lead to abuse, and yet they are apparently more okay with the abuse than homosexuality? Yes and yes, you said it correctly. It's disturbing. They're wrong, of course, but yeah, that is what they say. Do you think the average American Christian is aware of how much abuse occurs, or does it get hidden from them by authorities? I don't know. I don't know how many Catholics are aware of just how pervasive and bad things are in the Catholic Church. I don't know how many Jehovah's Witnesses are aware of how bad these issues are. Usually when you hear like defenders of the church, they say, okay, sure, there are some bad people in the Catholic Church, but one, they're dead now. This stuff happened decades and decades ago, so calm down. And two, public schools are just as bad. You will hear stories about teachers in public schools doing horrible things. Yes, the difference is public schools, by and large, as soon as they learn about these things, like, oh, there's an allegation against this person, They remove them from the classroom. They let law enforcement do their thing. And if those people are convicted of whatever it is they were accused of, they're never working in schools again. The same cannot be said of the church. So the false equivalency there, or this idea that, oh, it's worse in secular space, but in our religious community, we know how to handle it, is BS. I'm sure they know this stuff happens. I do not think most regular churchgoers are aware of how much worse it can get in religious settings. That is me speculating. I don't have numbers to back that up, but that's what my instinct's telling me. Have you heard of church sex insurance? Why your church needs an insurance checkup? Church insurance has become extremely complicated in recent years. This is true. Catholic churches, I've seen this for Catholic churches. You can buy insurance to help you cover priests who are like convicted of these crimes, and churches have to pay it. I think I did a story about this a while ago, unrelated to this topic, but it did show up. But yeah, that's a real thing. Insurance for predatory priests. It's wild. I think the edit should have a content warning. I will try to remind myself to put a content warning in the description when I put up this video. Den, can you mention the guy with the signs? What are we talking about, Den? I mean, flags, Den, something training. I have no idea what we're talking about. You could talk to Den in the comments and we'll figure that one out. And I have one last story for you. Let me pull this up. This one does not need a content warning. It's just a bad story. A story about religion behaving badly again, but it's not disturbing in that sense. 1 second here. Let me pull this up. And I think this is the last story I have for you. This is one I haven't posted yet, but I'm going to. So there's an update to a case I actually covered, I think last time, a couple of years ago. It's been a while since I've covered this story, but there was an important update. And this issue started in 2017, and it involves Southwest Airlines. So in 2017, there was a flight attendant named Charlene Carter, and she was fired by Southwest. Why? Because she was posting these anti-abortion messages on Facebook. Like, she was sending emails to her union president, and she made social media posts about how much she hated her union president. Why? Because the union president attended the 2017 Women's March that year. And she wrote, like, you truly are despicable in so many ways. And then she just kept sending emails to the point of harassment. The union president did not respond to these, but this woman just kept sending her those messages. And she accused the union president of murder for supporting abortion rights. And here's the thing. People are entitled to their personal views, right? But you're clearly violating the company policy regarding civility because you are harassing the union president. And also, in her public Facebook posts, I will show you this here. This is from a lawsuit. According to a Southwest letter, they did a fact-finding meeting. They said when Carter posted the videos and pictures on Facebook, she was identifiable as a Southwest Airlines employee. Like, she's wearing the uniform when she is doing all these videos and pictures. So, like, you may have really dumb, wild views about abortion, and this lady does, but, like, there's a difference between saying them in your private capacity and putting on your Southwest uniform and doing it, because now you are representing the company to the public. So that's why Southwest said, we need to fire you now. Like, among other things, there were pictures of her in uniform displaying her employee badge. And so here's the wild thing. She gets fired, and she says, they fired me because I'm Christian. Like, she made it sound like this was religious persecution, even though there was no evidence Southwest was punishing her for her faith. And so she filed a grievance with the union, and an arbitrator said, yeah, you weren't fired for your religion. So they sided with the airline. So then she sued Southwest and the union. And here's where it gets really weird, because this went to a jury trial. And the jury agreed with the woman that she was fired because of her religion. And I find that ridiculous, and I don't understand what the jury was thinking, but I was not privy to their conversations. But anyway, they said she should get her job back, that Southwest has to stop discriminating against employees on the basis of religion, and also the company has to notify all of its flight attendants about Title VII's prohibition on religious discrimination. Like Southwest has to tell everybody, hey, everybody, the law says we can't discriminate against you on the basis of religion. And wait, it gets worse. They also said this flight attendant, Charlene Carter, she deserves $5.1 million in damages, including nearly $1 million from the union. I shit you not, that is how this went down. This is the CBS headline from 2022 about this story. Fired Southwest flight attendant wins $5.1 million verdict. I don't know. Everything's wrong with the world. It makes no sense. Now, that award was later lowered to like 800,000, but still, why is she getting anything? I don't understand what Southwest did wrong here. But here's where you got to go with this. The jury said Southwest was wrong, so that's what the courts have to work off of. They don't get to just undo the decision because they don't like what the jury said. So here's the thing. Last year, the religious discrimination angle was the focus of a court hearing, and this became a huge controversy because, like I told you, Southwest was supposed to tell its flight attendants that we cannot discriminate against you due to your religious beliefs, right? Like that future tense is important. We cannot discriminate against you. We may not discriminate against you because of your faith, implying we will never do this again. But when the notice went out, that's not what happened. It said, the notice that Southwest sent to their flight attendants said, Southwest does not discriminate on the basis of religion. Does not discriminate. And depending on how you want to interpret that, they could have been saying, we don't currently do that, but who knows what we'll do in the future. We do not discriminate. Not we won't discriminate, but we do not currently discriminate. That's the implication. And they also did not mention Title VII in their notice like they were supposed to. So then the flight attendant is like, hey, judge, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So she went to the courts. And in August of 2023, a U.S. district judge named Brantley Starr, he issued a decision that was so insane. I want to make sure I'm reading this one correctly because I think here, check this out. This is what this judge said. It is hard to see how Southwest could have violated the notice requirement more. And then he offered examples of what he means. And he decided to cite the Bible and Lord of the Rings. So take these modified historical and movie anecdotes. What's the historical anecdote? Oh, the historical one is the Bible. After God told Adam, you must not eat from the tree, imagine if Adam told God, I do not eat from the tree in the middle of the garden while an apple core rests at his feet. I get the point he is making, but what the hell? Or where Gandalf bellows, you shall not pass, the Balrog muses, I do not pass, while strolling past Gandalf on the bridge of something. What the hell? Look at the citation at the very bottom. This guy's so proud of himself for working this into a decision. You know what I mean? I swear to God, conservative judges are the bane of my existence. Also, remember, he said the Bible is the historical example. So again, his point is, you guys should have said it this way, and I'm going to interpret you in the worst possible light to suggest that you are still going to discriminate against people in the future. So he held Southwest in contempt, saying they're not following my orders. And then he wrote out a draft of the new memo that Southwest had to send out to its employees. And then this judge said there is a chronic failure regarding federal protection for religious freedom. He's saying Southwest doesn't care about religious freedom. What did he say here? Check this out. Southwest needs to understand when communicating with its employees that federal protections for religious freedom override any company's civility policy. So this flight attendant was harassing her union rep and calling her a murderer and sending endless stream of comments on Facebook. And she's like, I'm doing it because I'm Christian. And all the courts are like, well, all right, if that's the reason, then you can keep doing whatever it is you want to do. But here's the other part of this. At the very end of his ruling, that judge said this. I'm just skipping ahead through the boring beginning part. Because Southwest's right to speak when implementing the court's injunction ensures a continued partnership in the future, and Southwest speech and actions toward employees demonstrate a chronic failure to understand the federal protections for religious freedom, the court concludes that training on religious freedom for 3 lawyers at Southwest, he said the 3 lawyers representing Southwest needed to go through special training for religious freedom. And then who's going to do that training? Look at this. The Alliance Defending Freedom has conducted such training in the past, and the court deems that appropriate here. The judge said you need to learn about religious freedom because you clearly don't know anything about it, lawyers. And by the way, there's a crazy ass right-wing group that does these sessions, and you should learn it from them. By the way, if you saw Last Week Tonight with John Oliver last Sunday, he did a whole long segment on Alliance Defending Freedom. Amazing segment, as all of his segments are. Go watch that if you haven't. Really quick, I reached out to ADF and I'm like, what'd you guys think of the John Oliver segment? Did you think any of it was incorrect? And so far, they've been radio silent on everything. I don't think they've mentioned it once. Anyway, this judge says go to the right-wing crazy group to learn about religious freedom, which is a wild, dumb thing to say. And when he explained himself, this judge said, don't worry, you don't even have to pay a lot of money for the training because all you got to do is pay enough money for one staffer from ADF to come to your headquarters in Dallas, Texas. That's not that big of a burden. You can pay for that. But why that group? They had nothing to do with this case. And Starr claimed that ADF is one of many esteemed nonprofit organizations that are dedicated to preserving free speech and religious freedom. And also, ADF offers these classes free of charge. So that's why he said you have to work with them. Nowhere did he explain why ADF and not a more credible organization like the ACLU or the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which can also train you in religious freedom, why couldn't they provide the training? Like, it was totally absurd. Chris Geithner, who writes about legal issues at his website, Law Dork, he summarized this at the time. ADF is not an unbiased educational institution, nor does it pretend to be. The only relevant training its website discusses in the training section is a legal academy connecting like-minded attorneys in an effort to show lawyers how to effectively advocate for religious liberty, free speech, the sanctity of life and marriage and family. Yeah, ADF wants to connect right-wing lawyers and help them connect with each other. They don't even say, yeah, we do religious training for outside groups. It's just not something they do. They are not neutral, though. This is not some third party, right? This is an organization that only sees religious freedom while wearing Jesus-tinted glasses. They believe sodomy should be illegal. They spread lies about gay people supporting pedophilia. They defend forced sterilization of trans people in Europe. Like bigotry in the name of Christianity counts as religious freedom for ADF lawyers, even if there are non-discrimination laws in play. So their arguments, regardless of right-wing judges ruling in their favor, have been widely criticized by legal scholars. And the weirdest thing is that the lady who's been spearheading this whole lawsuit, the flight attendant who's batshit crazy in all this, she didn't even ask for this. The judge is just like, you know what? I got an idea for how I can punish you. Go to these people. Like, it wasn't until that ruling that the judge even suggested they conduct these sessions. So, like, what would an ADF religious freedom training look like? I don't know. There were no specifics given. Plus, their track record suggests they don't even know what religious freedom is. So it seems to be whatever conservative judges will let them get away with. Right? Anyway, last year, lawyers for Southwest appealed this decision, saying, first of all, we should not have to pay out $800,000 to this flight attendant because there was no religious persecution, right? For all the reasons I've already talked about. And also, they said the ADF, they were primarily focused on the money, right? Which makes sense. They didn't even bring up the religious training thing. But depending on how the court ruled, that was going to have an effect on the training session. The Freedom from Religion Foundation filed an amicus brief basically saying it is unprecedented for a court to force attorneys to attend training by an ideological advocacy organization that happens to be religious. A Bloomberg reporter explained the training might go away depending on how these judges rule. Who knows what was going to happen? The weirdest thing is ADF filed their own amicus brief saying, you guys, we could totally do this religious training session. We've been really good at winning First Amendment cases with the Supreme Court, never mentioning that the reason they win is because the Supreme Court is right-wing and partisan. But anyway, last June, almost a year ago, the appellate court, they decided to pause the judge's ruling from going into effect. So you don't have to get the training. You don't have to pay the money yet. You have to wait till we issue our ruling. So they just paused it. So nothing happened. But the reason I bring all this up now is because last week, where is the story? Was it last week? It was about a week ago. The appellate court finally issued its ruling on this case. It's been a year since they paused it. They finally issued their ruling on the case, and they said two things. They ruled unanimously that the judge, Brantley Starr, the guy who said you have to take training from ADF, yeah, he totally overstepped his bounds when he told you to do that. And this is the headline from Reuters. Southwest lawyers don't need religious liberty training. And according to the article, when a court's contempt sanction in a civil matter is both overbroad in scope and undoubtedly punitive in nature, the judiciary risks appearing contemptuous, which is a very long way of saying he had no right to tell you to take a right-wing training seminar, and it sounds biased and like you don't have to do that, which is the right decision on that front. So yay, they don't have to do that. They also reversed a specific finding that Southwest discriminated against this woman because of her religious beliefs. However, they did not undo the jury's decision or the $800,000 penalty. Like, they decided to let that go through for other reasons. So, like, the original bad decision by the jury stands, but the idiotic additional punishment by the judge is going away. So is it good news? I don't know. Not really. It's ultimately a victory for this flight attendant who harassed everybody and caused all this chaos, even though Southwest appears on paper to have won this round. And the Trump judge who demanded the ADF training, he's not going to face any consequences for what he did. Just because it got reversed doesn't mean he can't try again. So it should never have gotten to this point. This woman was never fired for her religious faith. She was fired for being a really shitty employee. And the problem with professional victims like her is they can never admit they're the problem. And now she's going to get rewarded for it even though Southwest won't have to take religious discrimination training sessions or anything like that. It's just such a wacky, wacky story. But that's your update on this one. And I think I'm done there. What questions do we have here? Is this in that bonkers federal district in North Texas? I think I know what you're talking about, the one with Matthew Kaczmarek. And no, it's not his district. It's a different one. It might be the same appellate court, though, the Fifth Circuit appellate court. Yeah, it's the same appellate court, but it's not the bonkers one. It's just a different bonkers Texas judge. You forgot to mention that the judge is the nephew of Ken Starr. Sorry about that. I think you're right there. Yeah, Brantley Starr is the nephew of Clinton prosecutor Ken Starr. I would 100% convert to Christianity for that amount of money. First of all, you'll have to get in front of me in line, because for $800,000, I have no principles. Imagine if Southwest lawyers were Muslim, Buddhist, or anything other than Christian. Honestly, I don't even know what religion the three lawyers are. How is this even remotely an ethical ruling? That's forced religious training. Yeah, and we don't know how religious their training would have been, even though they incorporate Christianity or God, their version of God, into everything they do. There were so many things wrong with what that judge demanded they do. The flag guy that I talked about to challenge religious flags on government grounds. I don't think I have an update on that story that I mentioned like a week or two ago. So sorry, I don't have any updates on it. But thanks for that response. Oh, and thank you for that donation. I assume that means you're from Oklahoma, and I'm sorry. But thank you. All right, I think that's it. And that means we're going to last call. These are things I tweeted and totally forgot about at this point, but Den's gonna help me figure out what we are doing. Den, this is all yours. What are we talking about here? Let's see. Oh, okay. Oh, this is really interesting. This is from Rhode Island, and this is a representative in the Rhode Island State House who introduced a Day of Reason resolution, which is fantastic to see. And this is her announcing it in the chambers that day. This is Jennifer Stewart.
Representative Stewart, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. An announcement, please.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I bet most of you don't know this, but today, May 6th, is the National Day of Reason here in the state of Rhode Island. And the purpose of the day is to observe annually reason, critical thinking, and the importance of secularism in the United States. It's a day where individuals and organizations affirm the value of reason in public policy, civil rights, and civic life. And today in the State House, there was an observation earlier before session, and I'd like to introduce a couple of guests here to the chamber. Please, if you could stand, Brian Cardosa and Terry Sousa. These are members of the Rhode Island Atheists, and there are additional atheists members of the Rhode Island Atheists in the gallery. And they were here today, joined by a host of other Rhode Islanders, secularists, humanists, and believers in recognizing the Day of Reason. So please join me in welcoming them and enjoy this Day of Reason and think about the scientific method. All right, thanks. All right.
That's a cute speech. That's awesome. Again, that was also around the time that they have the National Day of Prayer, and there are so many Republicans across the country who go all out in declaring that the government is for Jesus, et cetera, et cetera. So to have someone like Representative Stewart there saying that proclamation, talking about science and reason, which is not anti anything, it is meaningful. It is purely symbolic, but that stuff is meaningful. I'm really glad the Rhode Island Atheists helped make that happen. And that was really uplifting to see. And happy birthday, Hulana. I did a story a week or two ago about the mayor of Winter Garden basically announcing a proclamation for like the Day of Prayer. And when an atheist asked him to do a Day of Reason proclamation, he refused to do it. And then a reporter asked him about it, and he started complaining about how some people have no respect for God. Well, here's a follow-up for you. That reporter went to the very next meeting to follow up on it, and she asked him point blank, are people who don't follow Jesus welcome in the city? And if you're anyone with one brain cell, you just say, of course they are, and you move on. And what did the mayor do? He would not answer the question. That's how bad this John Reese guy is. Absurd. But I do appreciate that the journalist in question, she writes for the website Vox Populi in Winter Garden. She asked him specifically, like, just make it clear to everybody when you issue these Day of Prayer proclamations that are very Christian-centric, please make it clear that you do not just represent Christians. And this guy refuses to do it. Unbelievable. This is exciting. From Jack Jenkins, wonderful religion reporter, you may have heard that Trump and Musk, for all their opposition to refugees and making life miserable for people coming from other countries, they're welcoming with open arms white people from South Africa. And apparently they were supposed to take in refugees, and church members were supposed to help them get acclimated or something. But the headline here, the Episcopal Church has announced it will end its partnership with the government to resettle refugees, saying they had moral opposition to resettling white Afrikaners from South Africa who've been classified as refugees by the Trump administration. They are not helping the Trump administration doing their white people only refugee resettlement stuff. So, I mean, man, good for the Episcopal Church for standing by their morals on this one, because not only were they working with the government to help refugees, they said, no, we totally know what you're doing here. We are not helping you pull this one off. And by the way, I wanted you to look at one thing. For a religion reporter, I love Jack, and I think his articles are fantastic. They don't always get a ton of traction, just like any article about religion doesn't always get a ton of traction. Look at how many retweets and likes this article had. From this screenshot that you have here, Den, we have 9,200 retweets and 25,000 likes. And I saw this mentioned on like news channels as well. This story broke through our circles and went mainstream in the way that a lot of people were talking about this, because, yeah, here's a church standing up for its principles. They want to help all refugees. Trump only wants to help certain white ones. And they're like, we are not helping you pull that one off. Good for them. And they've gotten a lot of praise, by the way, the church has for that too. Just amazing job. And thank you to Jack for writing that article. What else we got here? Oh, this is cool. So I mentioned this last week, but the American Humanist Association is having its annual convention at the end of June in Chicago. I'm getting an award for media, humanists in the media. I forgot the exact name of it, but it's very nice. But they just announced this today, where the Humanist of the Year is Jelani Cobb, who is the Dean of the Columbia School of Journalism. He writes for the New Yorker. Yes, I will be there in Chicago. But this is such a cool announcement. I'm such a fan of his writing, and every time he does interviews on news shows. And basically, here's a guy who cuts through BS and pushes for a country where everyone is welcome. And that is humanistic. I honestly don't know what Mr. Cobb's religious beliefs are, but it doesn't matter. He is pushing for a world where people are judged for who they are, working to make the world a better place, fighting against irrational thinking and BS, which you see a lot of in journalism. And if you're looking for someone who represents the best of journalism, here's the guy that's not only doing it, but he's training the people who are the best at doing it. So just a really interesting decision by the AHA. And I'm super excited he's going to be at that convention because I love listening to him. This is such a weird story because I feel like I must be missing something here. David Hogg is one of the survivors of the Parkland shooting in Florida years ago. He eventually went to college, decided to get active in politics because he's fed up with gun nuts and all that stuff. And he's been a really good voice, as far as I could tell, pushing for real change among the Democratic Party. And one of the things he said recently is, if I want to change the party, you can't. And by the way, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has done this too. You can't just rip on the party from the outside. I mean, you can, but it may not be as effective as working to make the change from the inside. So AOC, for example, has really done this thing where she's becoming powerful within the Democratic Party, taking on leadership roles within the party and not just like lobbing grenades from the outside. David Hogg last year, he decided to run for the Democratic National Committee, and he became one of their, they have a few vice presidents. He's one of them. And one of the things he said is, well, he also has a political action committee that works to, that supports candidates who are progressive and working for change. And if that means there are moderate Democrats who are not lifting their weight or getting lobbying money, getting money from lobbyist groups that work against progressive interests, David Hogg is like, I don't care if they're incumbents. We're going to work to make sure better candidates beat them in the primaries, and then we're going to work our ass off to get them elected. Now, he's been nuanced about this. If there are some seats that, like, for example, just hypothetically, in West Virginia, if Joe Manchin were running for Senate, and he's like the only Democrat that could possibly win that race, David Hogg, to my understanding, has been like, we're not going to target that guy. He can have the seat because we're not going to do any better than that. But in safe blue districts where anyone who's a Democrat could probably get elected, why would you settle for a shitty, moderate Democrat? So he said, I'm going to use my PAC to support candidates who are real progressives. And if that means getting rid of some Democrat that's been in power for many years, who cares? Let's get someone good in there. And I love that. And what did the Democratic National Committee do? They said, we're going to make you not a vice president anymore. And I think today they voted to like redo the vote so that maybe they can kick this guy out. Because the one thing the Democratic Party loves to do, besides shooting itself in the foot, is help incumbents even if they're not good at their jobs. So I don't know how this ends, but that's what this joke is supposed to be about. But if you want the party to actually attract more people and get good people who could fight for good causes, you need to get rid of the people who just think their job is being in Congress instead of using that platform to actually get shit done. So I don't know. It's frustrating that the only sane party is doing dumb things. I did enjoy this typo from the Christian nationalist Tony Perkins. And by the way, I know he made a typo because he, I think he deleted this one, and he fixed it later. But a clear majority of Americans do want their taxes to pay for gender transition procedures. Whoops, doesn't know how to read, so he made that mistake. I don't know where he's getting that number from anyway. I think if you ask people, do you think taxes should pay for gender transitions? Yeah, most people are going to say no, because that sounds weird. But if you ask people, hey, do you think Americans should get health care for whatever the reason is? They would be behind it. So it just depends on how you want to ask the question. I happen to believe that trans people deserve health care too, because I'm a weird progressive. What else we got here? Is the gaff the giraffe thing? I don't get it. Oh, okay. This dude, do you remember this guy? Like right after the inauguration, this dude spoke at some right-wing summit. His name is Calvin Robinson, and he's a Episcopal priest or something. He gave a speech to a right-wing group, and he ended it with the Hitler salute that Elon Musk did like the day before. And then after he did it, the Anglican Church is like, dude, you can't do that. We're firing you. And they insisted, we're taking away your priest license, not because of the salute, not only because of the salute, but because you have a history of just pushing your politics into your job, and that's not what your job is supposed to be. And then recently, the Reformed Episcopal Church said, we're giving you a 1-year contract to work with us, because apparently this is the guy you want to redeem. And then just today, that same group said, oh, we're taking your license away. It turns out you've said some really crazy shit. So just like that, this guy is out of a job again. Here's a thought. Just don't hire this dude. None of you owe this guy anything. He's not worth your time. What are all these groups doing? This is also interesting. This is from Oklahoma Representative Mickey Dolenz, who said, as a sitting representative, he got an email from the National Association of Christian Lawmakers saying, come to our conference. And what Dolenz is saying is NACL has been flooding my inbox with invitations to their conference at Liberty University. Why? Because one of the things they do at this conference is they hand out like, hey, in your state, here's a draft policy. It's already written for you. Go submit it so it can become law. And they all trade with each other. They're like, oh, you hate women too? I got a policy for that right here. Oh, you want to get Jesus into your school system? Here's a draft policy for you. And this is how they do it, state by state. Not just NACL, but other groups, other Christian nationalist groups like Alliance Defending Freedom. They write up these draft policies. And that's why you see like 10 Commandments in the public schools bills everywhere, and released time in public school bills everywhere, because they all copy and paste from each other. And they all encourage Republicans to get this shit done in all of these states. And the more you could bring them together to trade ideas, the easier it becomes to pass these things in some states, no matter where you are. So he was pointing out, this is how they're getting this stuff done, which also makes me think like, okay, what's the secular equivalent of that? Because there needs to be one where good progressive policies can just make their way around the country in states where that could actually pass. The Heritage Foundation, as a commenter points out, the Heritage Foundation does this. Project 2025 is all about this. But yeah, it's worth keeping an eye on for that reason. I think there are some progressive groups, to be clear, that do something like this. They're just not nearly as powerful. And, okay, this is just amusing. There is a right-wing Christian nationalist state representative in Michigan. His name is Josh Shriver. We have talked about him in the past. But Right Wing Watch apparently saw that he just released an album. An album. And the track opens with this line, and I'm reading it. Oh, yeah, you want to see me rapping? Okay. I just took some pre-workout. I guess that means that I should lift. That's not a rap. That doesn't even rhyme. I don't know what he's doing. But Right Wing Watch played a clip. And Den, go ahead and play this. Before you play it, what do you think this is going to sound like when a white Republican lawmaker who's not good at the lawmaking part, but is good at Christian nationalism, when that dude decides to release an album, what do you think it's going to sound like? I think Den is nice enough to put some lyrics over here. Let's listen to it while I drink my blue Gatorade.
I just took some pre-workout. I guess that means that I should lift. Faithfulness replaces doubt. In this life you'll have some dips. I can stop myself from doing what I ought not do. Self-control is what the Holy Spirit will produce.
You've got to call on your God. You've got to call on your God. You've got to call on your God. You've got to call on your God.
I'm not talking crazy. Cracker the day like AV. Jesus came to save me. Shout out to the AP. Get your credits done before you turn 18. Go to Ivy League. It's okay to read.
I might just have to go acapella. You didn't have to bring any food. I've come to let it rip. We're in a predicament. We've all sinned. How can we
How
make
long are you
amends?
playing this, Dan?
Jesus died, then he rose again. It's not a lie. It's good news, my friend. The good news is the gospel, and the gospel is Jesus Christ. He came and he died and he rose again. If you don't believe, then I'm not really sure why, and I don't think that you could even have a good reason.
Listen, if this dude had any friends, they would not let him put this out. How? How is that a thing? Why would you do that to yourself? Why is that the way every Republican sounds when they release a rap album? Because he is not the only one who has done this. Oh my God, it's so bad. There was every time conservative Christians decide to put themselves, it's like Kevin Sorbo, like, I'm going to be a famous actor. It's like, please don't. It's never good. But it's also, there was a Christian right-wing anti-abortion lady from Ohio, forgot her name. She decided to make a sitcom, like a actual laugh track sitcom, and Right Wing Watch had that clip as well, and it was so horribly bad. Oh my God. Yeah, all of these, listen, I'll tell you what. If this guy, Josh Shriver, if he left the state house and decided to focus full time on his rap career, I would buy every album. If he stepped down from Congress. Like, I see this joke. But no, don't keep your day job. Your day job is the problem. The rapping is dumb. But go live your best life as a horrible rapper. You would not be alone. Please quit your day job and just do that. All right. Is there anything else, Den? Excellent. Thank you all so much for sticking around and listening to that with me. So now you'll have nightmares for the rest of your life. Thank you. It's so good to have Den back. You can subscribe, friendlyatheist.com. You can always support the channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. Please do that. And I'll see you next week. Thanks so much.